Alright, I got it. Gotta keep on, yeah, come on.
Get all the way going. I just want to thank y'all for coming on a Sunday. Today's a very special day, Malcolm's birthday. So we were able to gather May 19th, 1925, and Malcolm's birthday. So if he was with us today, we'd be celebrating his 99th year of life. But he's not. But he is, because his legacy lives on. So in this book, and I'm Tyson Amir, most of you I know, so pardon me for just jumping in and out like that. But if there is anybody here that I do not know directly, I am Tyson Amir. This is a book that I put together. This is officially my third published work, but this is my second work that I really made public. The second work that I published, I worked on with Sister Camila in the back. It's a book that we have called the Black Program Journal. So I have a program with my education consultancy firm. It's called the Black Program. It stands for Building Leaders and Activists with Collective Knowledge. And so we've been doing it in schools and school districts for about 5, almost 6 years now. And so last summer, I hit up Sister Camila. I'm like, Camila, I got this program, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing some stuff, but I want to do something different. I want to create a book for it, for the students to work on. And Camila does these dope journals. And so she was like, let's do it. So I sent her some stuff. She began creating a dope layout for the book. So with the Black Program Journal, we only have it for the students in our program. This school year, we had more than 1,000 black students in the Black Program across 23 different schools. And so with every school, every student got a copy of the Black Program Journal, so it was dope, right? And this book right here, I'm gonna tell you a lot about it because it came from a really, I think, deep space, like in my mind, my heart, and my soul. But this is the second book that I've created and I want to give to the public. So my first is right here on my hat, Black Boy Poems. So this came out on October 15th, 2016. October 15th, of course, is an important date in our history. That's the birth of the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was created a few blocks away from us in West Oakland. So October 15th, 2016, Black Boy Poems comes out. It's been circulating in the community for 8 years, and it's done well. It's in schools, it's in a lot of households, it's in some other countries as well. And the feeling that I had when I was creating Black Boy Poems was similar to the feeling I had when I was creating this. And because I knew that I had put something together, or at least I had hoped that I put something together that was going to have a major impact on our community. And so I call this Carry On Tradition. Well, Chad, you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet, right? Go ahead, let me grab another one. I call this Carry On Tradition because being in this space is a representation of the tradition. All right, so does everybody in here have a book? Because we could just do, everybody got a copy? Not even, like, don't feel like you gotta purchase it. I want everybody to be able to see it. Here you go. Aside from that, everybody else got one? Because I want y'all to be able to see how it moves, why it's doing certain things. Kenny, you good? You got one?
I got one right
that you working with? Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. So to talk about the place that we're in, I want you to go to, and I'll get quicker with this. I don't even have the page numbers memorized, but you know what I'm saying? I'll get there. Go ahead, flip to page 83. So towards the back, flip to page 83. Page 83. So on page 83, you see tradition, if you're there, tradition of the Nation of Islam. And this space, the origins of the birthplace of it, this place is an expansion of the legacy of the Nation of Islam. So when you walked in, I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at the awning the Elijah Muhammad Cultural Center. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was the leader of the Nation of Islam from 1933, 1934 until he passes away in 1975, and then when he passes away, the leadership of the Nation of Islam is passed to his son, Waritheen Muhammad, who then takes the nation from where it was into its new chapter. And this place right here is a manifestation of that step into that new chapter. And that the history, the totality of that, though, is a tradition that is extremely important in our community, but not just our community, and communities in general. Like what it took in order for what established the nation to continue to have an impact on Black communities generation after generation after generation where we are in the present day. That's important. Our students aren't being taught that in school. That's not part of the conversation that's happening in our communities. So there has to be a place for us to be able to capture that and elevate that, especially the important lessons that come from that. So you'll see when we're talking about carry on tradition, they're the traditions of our people. And the way that the book starts, it begins with a song, well, a verse from a song that I wrote back in 2015, 2016. The song is called Tradition. And in that, there's two verses. The first verse, I speak to the tradition that produced me. And when I look at my mother, I look at my father, I look at the generations that came before me. We come from a generation of dedicated freedom fighting for Black people. As far back as I can go, I see people in my family who have stood up and fought for the freedom of our people. There's no doubt about that. I come from that tradition. I know I do. And it's important for me to embody it in the most authentic way possible. So that's where the text starts. But then when we're talking about where does that tradition begin for us, I want y'all to flip to page 12 and then page 13. So on 12 and 13 is what you're going to see. So you see the first images in the book. All of these images that you see in this book, I used AI technology to create them. So every image is AI generated. On page 12, the first image that you see is a historical reimagining for me of a moment that took place in the year 1441. In 1441, the first Western Europeans, the Portuguese, came to the coast of West Africa. You had these two captains on that ship, and they just moved with some barbaric, brutal, gangster, vigilante action. Jumped off their boats, forcibly kidnapped 12 West Africans, put them back on them boats, went back to Portugal, and these were the first 12 West Africans that were forcibly enslaved in the chapter that would become the transatlantic slave trade. This is that first moment that's depicted. Oftentimes, if we're looking at schools and the curriculum that our students are being taught, that moment is not being described. That's first. But second, what's not being described is what's on page 13. And y'all gotta know what's on page 13, because this is the beginning of our tradition. You know what I'm saying? So the book is called Carry On Tradition. The subtitle is A History of Righteous Rebellion. Carry On Tradition, A History of Righteous Rebellion. So in response to this first moment, our ancestors in West Africa, they didn't just sit by. They saw what happened, and they began to prepare themselves because they knew that this might happen again. And they said, if this happens again, we're going to respond. And we're going to respond with all the power that we have in us to protect our people and to keep our people free. So, those captains that were on that first ship, they went back. They were successful with another quote-unquote slave raid. Went back to Portugal, came back to West Africa, tried to do it again. In the third instance for one of those captains, this is what happened. The West Africans were ready. They saw the ship coming. They attacked it. They destroyed the ship. Everybody on the ship was killed. because they knew they had to stand up and fight for their people in order to be free. The second captain, on his third journey as well, he met the same fate. So the response, the righteous response, was established. And it's a tradition that carries on. So then from there, I want y'all to flip to the next page. You get to page 14, you see rebellion at sea. Because what I wanted to do was we start the conversation where it began. It began in West Africa. Then we have some of our ancestors that are forcibly taken from the coast of West Africa. But they rebelled, they were constantly rebelling, they were constantly resisting. So that story needs to be told. So there's stories of resistance that happened on the coast of West Africa, where we had our brothers and sisters who saw what were happening, they went out and they attacked the ships. Or we had brothers and sisters who saw what was going and they coordinated efforts in order to rebel right then and there. Or they rebelled at sea. You know what I'm saying? There's constant actions of resistance and rebellion. So then this gets us from West Africa to the African continent. What's going on, bro? It's good to see you, man. Appreciate you being here. Come on, get you a copy.
Have somebody else to do this.
So you can see what we're doing. Right on, right on.
That's it. You just stay there and let somebody else do it.
I got you, but nah, that's the homie. I had to. It's important to acknowledge that he was in here. All right. So then, now that we've moved from the coast of West Africa across the Atlantic Ocean, everything that you start to see from there are detailing the stories of righteous resistance and rebellion that happened in the Western Hemisphere. But then you'll see stories that take us back to the African continent because it becomes a diasporic tradition of resistance and rebellion. Right on, right on. Well, come on in. So the first one that we start getting into, on page 15, you get the tradition of Santo Domingo. All right, so we start building, and then I want y'all to see this because it'll give you the formula for how the book works. So we get into this historical example, and then with these historical examples, there's so many other ones that could have been included in the book. I just wanted to give us some outline of what this tradition looks like. All right, so page 15, Tradition of Santo Domingo, you flip over, we get what the island of Haiti looked like, because we got to pay respect to the native and the indigenous people who were there. So we tell a little bit of that story. Then we get into the story of Spanish colonization, because this is leading us up to Columbus. Right, so 1492, Columbus coming in, beginning to colonize the land. Then we move to the next piece. So when you flip over to page 18, you get the history of African peoples on the island of Haiti before what becomes the Santo Domingo Rebellion. So from the late 1400s, early 1500s, we got African peoples there, right, because of the Spanish. Then we get to December 25th, 1521. Some historians put it at 1522, but this is the Santo Domingo Rebellion. And in this image here, like I said, everything here is AI generated. We have a man and we have a woman leading the rebellion, because that's what our historical sources say. They say it was a brother and a sister who led this rebellion, and it took place on this plantation that was owned by Cristobal. Let me make sure I'm saying the brother's name right. Diego Colon. So Cristobal Colon, that's Christopher Columbus. So his son, Diego Colon, owned a plantation, and on that plantation, folks organized, they planned, and they said, we're gonna attack on the night of Christmas. And they did. So this is the first documented organized rebellion that happens in the Western Hemisphere. And I wanted to do that because that's part of the tradition that I'm showing. I want to show there are all these instances of organized righteous rebellion that our people engaged in. All right, so then you get that. So you get the breakdown of that on this page, on the Santo Domingo Rebellion, page 19. Then you flip over, you get Legacy of Santo Domingo on page 20. So each one of these things ends with a legacy section, because this is the tradition that we have to carry on. And not just us, this is the tradition that gets carried on. How you doing, baby? You wanna come sit over here? Come on, let me put this down. You come sit over here. Alright? This is my daughter Medium. And if anybody looked on one of the intro pages, she's who I dedicated the book to, along with my niece, Olivia. So it makes sense because this is her book. So it says, for Medium, Olivia, and all current and future generations who will nobly carry on tradition for our people to be free. So she's one of those tradition carriers. Right on. Okay, so then the next one, y'all, I ain't gonna take you through every section of the book, but I want y'all to get familiar with how it works. All right, so we'll continue from there. On page 21. Yeah, baby. You wanna see some toys? Okay. Mama got you the toys, okay? You wanna go over to Mama? All right. Okay. So on page 21, we have tradition of Gaspar Yanga. All right, before we even go into this, how many of y'all have heard of this brother before? If any of you heard of Gaspar Yanga, raise your hand. All right, so that's new for just about everybody in here. Let's go. This brother's story is crazy. All right, so then flip to page 22. Again, AI generated. So we're talking about, this is a story that takes place in the late 1500s going into the 1600s. So Gaspar, I based his image on, there's a statue in like the Veracruz, Mexico area dedicated to Gaspar. So it's a very famous statue of him. He's standing up. He has like a spear in his hand and he has a broken shackle on his other wrist because he was one of our ancestors that was forcibly enslaved, but he escaped enslavement. And not just escaped enslavement by himself, he did it with a number of brothers and sisters. So leads his people to freedom, but not only does he lead his people to freedom, he engages in a military struggle that takes somewhere between 20 to 30 years against the Spanish colonizers. Fights them for decades with his people. He's the leader, the military strategist, leading raids on them. Sometimes they're full-out military skirmishes, fighting. And then what happens, the Spanish were like, bro, we can't defeat you, we can't defeat your people. So they negotiate with him. And in the negotiation, they sign off on a treaty saying, Gaspar Yanga and all of his people are free. The land that they're on will forever be free. And that he is the leader of those people. And that was a treaty that stayed intact all the way until the independence of Mexico, when Mexico fought against the Spanish and declared their independence in 1821. Well, not only declared, like won their independence in 1821. So this brother's story right here is incredible. He's known as, and literally is, the first person that liberated territory that was colonized by Western Europeans in the story of the colonial Western Hemisphere. The first. Who was it? Who? A black person. And not only that, black folks that engaged in the tradition of righteous rebellion. So this is the same tradition that was produced in that 1441 moment. This is the same tradition that was displayed in Santo Domingo in that rebellion. And then it continues. And in the way that we wrote the history in here, tried to do it where you get information, you for sure get a lot of history that you might not be familiar with, but it's, just bite-sized pieces to make it easy. I was thinking about folks who are parents, folks who got young folks under them. You can read one of these stories every night to your young people. If you're a teacher, you can easily bring this information into your classroom and have it for your students. And then it continues. So then we go from Gaspar Yanga, then we go to Queen Nzinga. So now we're in Jamaica. So this is taking us throughout the diaspora. So we got Queen Nzinga next, and then we get her story. And it's similar where we focus on, we're Queen Nzinga, so we're not in Jamaica. No, we're back on the African continent, and she's dealing with the Portuguese and fighting against them. So we start with her story as a young woman growing up in her community, so in Dongo. Then we talk about the Portuguese colonizing the area. Then we move into more of the story on Nzinga, and you just see the pictures. And what I tried to do with it, like I told you, this is all done with AI. When I created an image of somebody, especially if I created an image of them as a young person, I then have that same character age as we move through the history. So you start out with Queen Nzinga, she's younger, and then she gets older. And then when we're talking about Queen Nzinga, you get the major battles. Like, fam, I mean, look at these images. Like she was really out there fighting. So if we're reimagining what it might look like or what she may have done, I'm trying to bring that to life for us. And then for me, as I remember when I was younger, early 80s, probably like mid to late 80s, I remember seeing these posters that I think it was Anheuser-Busch or something like that created. But they were doing these profiles on like African kings and African queens. And they had these really beautiful images, and they would have like some history behind them. I just remember seeing them in a lot of like black spaces. I ain't never seen anything, and I'm not claiming like I did it, but it's important for our history to look powerful to us. And not only that, like it was powerful history. So all we're doing now is just trying to have the image match up with the historical reality. So you get Queen Nzinga, the major battles, and then we get the legacy. And then one thing that I want y'all to see, with just about every legacy picture, I tried to create it in a way where if we're talking about a specific figure, they're looking at you in that legacy picture. Because I want you, or I want the reader to feel like, oh yeah, they calling to me that I need to carry this tradition forward. So then we get Queen Nzinga, then after that we get Queen Nanny, so then that brings us to Jamaica. And then you get the story there. So you start off with a depiction of what Queen Nanny might have looked like as a young girl. And then there's so many different stories about whether she was raised on the African continent or she was born in Jamaica. So we speak to that in there. But I was like, if she was raised on the in West Africa, this might be what her upbringing looked like. All right, then we get to British colonization, because they're the ones who colonized Jamaica when she and her people were fighting for their freedom. Then you get Nanny Town. Then you get the first Maroon War. You get a breakdown of that. That's on page 35. Then we finish out the rest of it with the legacy picture. And this is one I didn't have her looking at the reader, because one of the most famous depictions of Queen Nanny is a profile shot of her. So I don't know if any of y'all been to Jamaica, if you've ever had a $500 note in your hand in Jamaica, you'll see Queen Nanny's head there on that. And this is like her famous silhouette shot. So I wanted to pay respect to the way that Jamaicans oftentimes see her. So that's why it's the profile shot. And then it continues. The Haitian Revolution piece, I love this part. There's a lot of dope stuff in there. So we focus on the origins of the Haitian Revolution. We tell the story of Toussaint, and then we get into the story of Jean-Jacques Dessalines. I want to point out something to y'all. Go to page 44. On page 44, you'll see this image. It's more of a cartoon image. So you got Jean-Jacques Dessalines there, and then you have a sister who's known either by Victoria Montu or Akbaraya Toya. And what was really dope in the research that I was doing on this part, because this was all new information to me, and that's why I wanted to have her and him together in the image. So Jean-Jacques Dessalines, he joins what becomes the Haitian Revolution, like late 20s, early 30s. And then he gets trained as a soldier. The person who is training him is this sister right here. How many of y'all have heard of the warrior women of Dahomey? So the sister right here, she was supposedly from the warrior women of Dahomey. She's enslaved. She's in Haiti. She begins training the Haitian revolutionaries in military strategy because she learned that in Dahomey. So she was the person who trained Jean-Jacques Dessalines as a soldier and as a military leader. That's crazy. When I came across that, I was like, dang, fam. Like how deep the traditions run and the connections in our history. You know what I'm saying? somebody who was a woman who was trained to fight, soldier from the womb, basically. You know what I'm saying? She ends up over here in this historical context and then is able to use her knowledge, her information, her skills, her training to raise up the Haitian rebels, the revolutionary fighters, and they win. And this is another thing that you're going to see time and time in this text. The tradition of righteous resistance and righteous rebellion is one thing, but not only that, our people won so much. Haiti liberated itself. They defeated their enslavers and their oppressors. Gaspar Yanga, he won. There's other folks that we're going to see, they won. And the fight is a justified fight, it's a moral fight, it's a righteous fight, and our people have been winning. So it continues. And after we get into the Haitian Revolution, we have, oh yeah, so you get another legacy picture of Jean-Jacques Dessalines at the end of that. You get Nat Turner, we get Carlotta La Negra, her story is dope in Cuba. So we end up bouncing all the way around. We get Sister Harriet Tubman in here. We get Ya Santiwa. Then we start getting closer to the way that we wrap up the book. All right, I'd love for y'all just to follow me on this real quick as we start to wrap up this portion of it. So flip over to page 77. And on page 77, you're gonna see the tradition of Marcus Garvey. All right, we go over 78. I hope if anybody's really looked at photos of Marcus Garvey, if you look at this, you'll be like, yeah, that favors Garvey. So the first one, we got a young Garvey. What I'm trying to depict right here is Garvey on his journey from Jamaica to the United States. So in 1915, he's corresponding with Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington passes away in November 1915. Garvey makes a decision to come to the U.S. in 1916 or 1917. When he arrives in the U.S., he goes to Harlem. He's in New York. He goes to Harlem, and he establishes his UNIA there. So this is me trying to give y'all an image of Garvey on that boat ride over, leaving Jamaica, coming to the States, and a younger Garvey. All right, then we get Garvey in the UNIA, get a breakdown of that. That should look familiar. If you've seen some of those very famous photos and some video footage that we have of Garvey from that time. Then we get to Black Star UNIA work. Garvey with some of the folks in the UNIA in front of one of their boats. They have multiple boats, but I've never really seen a picture like this, so I wanted to create that. And then we get Legacy of Garvey. We got an older Garvey. This is me trying to depict him about a year, maybe 6 months before he passes away. Then after that, we get into the tradition of the Nation of Islam. So we have the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the history of the nation. I put Malcolm in here as well because Malcolm was nurtured by the nation. Of course, they part ways, and then Malcolm goes on his own for a little while before he's assassinated, but the nation was such an important formative experience for him. So we got Malcolm in here, we get the legacy of Malcolm, and then we finish out with the legacy of the Nation of Islam, and then we get to the tradition of the Black Panther Party. We get the origins of the Black Panther Party. I got a picture of Huey, and I made this a little bit more cartoonish, not to make a joke of it, but the images that I kept getting for Huey, it wasn't Huey. It was something that was missing in it. So I was like, all right, let me make it just a little bit more artistic to give me some more freedom with that. But you get a lot of great history there, talking about how the Black Panther Party was inspired by the example of the nation, more specifically the example of Malcolm. There's a quote in there where Huey says, the Black Panther Party embodies the spirit of Malcolm X. Right? We get that in there because that's the tradition. It inspires generation after generation. Then we get to the legacy of the Black Panther Party. And then also in this, there's a quote that I was told by my Black Panther elders, and they said that Huey, when he would talk about the origins of the Black Panther Party, so it started October 15, 1966, but he would also say the Black Panther Party started in that first moment when the first brothers and sisters were stolen from the African continent. So we have that moment depicted, 1441. So this, when we get to the Black Panther Party, it's the first of two full circle moments in the text. Because he said that spirit of righteous resistance, which eventually led to the formation of the Black Panther Party in 1966, was established in that one moment. So we get that. Then we finish out with another figure who's extremely important on page 93. So 94 and 95, we have Amilcar Cabral. Second full circle moment. Why? Because Cabral in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, his revolutionary movement with his comrades from 1963 to 1973, they defeated the Portuguese who started the entire story in 1441. They were the first to come and take our ancestors from West Africa. They were the first to begin colonizing parts of West Africa in 1446, again in 1462. And in this revolutionary struggle from 1963 to 1973, it liberates the land that the Portuguese first colonized. And this is through Amilcar Cabral, his revolutionary formation, and they won. Again, this is another victory. They were able to kick the Portuguese out. It took more than 500 years, but they won. And when we're talking about our people and we're talking about a tradition, this is a tradition that has been established and has existed for centuries in the history of our people. And our people have always carried it on every single generation. So then the book finishes with the summary of all of that, and then a call for us, if we're serious about our history and we're serious about our people, how do we carry on the tradition? So there's some bullet points on page 99. I say we have to reconnect with an accurate understanding of who we are. We have to reconnect with an accurate understanding of our connection and responsibility to our people. We should all possess the skills to protect and defend ourselves, our families, and our communities. If we don't have those skills, then we need to learn them. If we do not know how to fight, if we do not know how to protect our people, we need to learn that. That's not an excuse. This is what our ancestors have been showing us for centuries, and they've been showing us that this is necessary in the world that we inhabit. It's not we can't make an excuse, oh, we don't know, so we ain't gonna stand up. Nah, fam, no. Carry on the tradition. Then we go. We must teach our youth how to protect and defend themselves, their families, and their communities. We must not be afraid to stand up for what is right when it comes to ourselves, family, and our people. We must not be afraid to stand up and fight for ourselves, our families, and our people. That is the essence of our tradition. And if we do that, then we are seriously carrying on our tradition. And by carrying on our tradition, we can win.
All right.
So for me, coming up, I got this from my elders. You know what I'm saying? The young people ain't getting this. This is not going to be taught to them in schools, because schools are an extension of the colonial imperial machine. But we got to get it. And so, with the technology that we have at our fingertips, we can make it happen. And so that's why I wanted y'all to see this. Like, it's the book, I hope you feel like it looks beautiful. I hope you see these images and you like, that's dope. I hope when you look at this, you see something in the history, like I'm learning stuff, but it's also a manual for us. And this is what our ancestors have been doing. They've been teaching us these lessons. Do what you can to protect your people, to stand up and fight for your people. We see multiple examples. These aren't all the examples. I just wanted to give us a few. But I wanted you to see that full circle. It started back 1400s. Our people have been fighting ever since. Our people have multiple victories throughout this time. And I wanted y'all to see this last one where the people who started it, we was able to kick them out. And we continuing to fight for our people to be free all over. But that's what you see in this text, carry on tradition. So yeah, I'm proud of it. I hope that it is something that is going to bring a great deal of value to you, to your family, to our communities. I'm going to be on my mission to get this into as many schools as possible because they need this information. And there's more to come. I'm going to make a children's version of this. That's one of my next plans. I plan on doing another volume of this to include some other stories that weren't in this one. But I can't wait for it to be in y'all hands. And let me know what you experience reading this, because it's going to help me as I work on what I'll be creating in the future. You know what
There you go.
Sorry,
Good.
yeah.
Ready to go. How'd you do out there? Her birthday is like March after midnight. Versus March 15th. So we did the birthday at Happy Hollow for 3 years. But she's like 11 months old. Yeah. Easy.
You can watch her.
That's your bread. Oh.
Preparing for all this. So that's a
Yes, sir. Drop your glasses.
Okay.
all right.
All right, love. Yeah. I'm gonna go home and make something on it. Read it.
There was like a bad accident. We are like so late. No, I had to say, I can't talk about it. No, I'm just saying I feel bad. You're like, traffic is terrible. There's an accident. Like all this stuff. Millie! Let me just say what's up, because I was so uncomfortable. An hour ago, there's an accident. And I was like, we are our friends from Brooklyn. We're we have a reservation in the cities, and I was like, okay, well, we'll just like do it like 4:30.
Obama was supposed to help me with the book.
I'm saying that I can edit it. Yeah, she's
Congratulations, man.
I'm so proud of you, man. You know, that's the way I feel. Brother, doing a great job. Great job.
Let me see.
Guys not in there? It's good?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
We got both of us in there? All right, I want you great job.
Heart attack, stroke.
No, you have a responsibility, you know that, right? Where was that? Mucho gusto,
Oh, that's so cute. She's never back to me.
Alright, I got it. Gotta keep on, yeah. Come on, come on. We got to keep striving. We've got to keep fighting.